Films, movies, flicks. Wait, flicks? Seriously, flicks? Yep, seriously. Yes, today we are talking about films, or as they say in America, movies. That's a lot of useful common words and phrases. Words and phrases like, are you a Star Wars person? It's set in. Mulholland Drive was filmed on location. There's this one scene where, and the pacing is spot on, and many, many, many more. So, yeah, let's talk about films. So, here's a question for you. What's your favourite film? Or, to put it another, more general way, what kind of films do you like? What kind of films are you into? Just like music, there are lots of different types of films out there. Action films, which were massive in the 80s and tend to feature big, oily muscle men jumping out of exploding buildings. You've got sci-fi films, that's science fiction films, with aliens and strange planets and lasers in space, which is physically impossible, but never mind. Comedies, films that make you laugh, or at least try to make you laugh. There are adventure films, which may or may not involve getting lost in the jungle. It seems to happen a lot in adventure films, getting lost in the jungle. Historical dramas with their costumes and old-fashioned telephones and people walking into rooms and saying, "Oh, sorry, Sebastian." Biopics, which show the life of someone famous, like Bob Dylan or Margaret Thatcher. You've got horror films where people, for some weird reason, enjoy watching because it makes them scared. Never understood that. There are also thrillers, which are like horror films. They're scary, but not because of ghosts and monsters, but because of people. Usually crazy people. Very crazy people. And much, much more. There are lots of genres of film out there. And to be fair, most films are a kind of a mixture of these different genres, aren't they? So, back to the question, what kind of films are you into? Are you into sci-fi much? Are you a Star Wars person? If so, what did you think of the new films? Answer me in the comments. Maybe you like all sorts. The genre doesn't matter as long as it's got a good storyline or cool effects, or as long as it's got Christopher Walken in it. I mean, there is a rule in cinema that states any film is automatically good if it has Christopher Walken in it, right? Seriously, that man oozes charisma. Or maybe you're not really into films at all. Maybe, like me, you're more of a TV series person. But on the rare occasion that you do watch a film, how do you describe it? Let's look at some words and phrases for that through my favourite film. My favourite film is Mulholland Drive. Mulholland Drive is a surreal, psychological thriller. It's set in Los Angeles, meaning that the events of the film happen in Los Angeles, and it was also shot in Los Angeles, meaning that they made the film there. So you could say that Mulholland Drive was filmed on location. But of course, some films aren't shot on location. I mean, take Lord of the Rings, for example. That is set in Middle-earth. But since Middle-earth doesn't actually exist, it was shot, or it was filmed, in the closest thing we have to Middle-earth, New Zealand. Anyway, back to Mulholland Drive. Mulholland Drive was directed by David Lynch, so you can say that it's a Lynch film, or as the Americans say, movie, or even a Lynch flick. It stars Naomi Watts and Laura Harring and was released in 2001. In the film, Naomi Watts plays Dianne, a hopeful character arriving in Los Angeles hoping to make it big in Hollywood. She moves to her Aunt Ruth's house where she finds Betty, another woman around her age who seems to have lost her memory after a car crash. Then, very dark things happen. There's this one scene where a kind of sort of tramp monster character just appears out of nowhere. You are expecting something to happen, but you don't know what. And yeah, well, it's a crazy scene and it's a scary scene. But yeah, so seriously, if you don't like dark stuff, stay clear of this one. And going back to the original question, what's your favourite film and why do you like it? Maybe, like Mulholland Drive, your favourite film has a twist in the ending, a surprising and unexpected change in the last few minutes of the film. Twists are everywhere now and made popular by the 90s flick The Usual Suspects, which keeps you guessing to the last minute, and it was even further popularised by Fight Club. Such a good film, Fight Club. Maybe your favourite film's your favourite film because the acting is totally on form, or maybe the pacing is spot on. The pacing, by the way, is how fast the film is and how it moves and changes. I recently went to the cinema for the first time since COVID and watched the new Bond film, the new James Bond film, No Time to Die. One thing that struck me was the cinematography. It was amazing. The whole film felt like an 80s nostalgia YouTube video, but a good one. Some films, like Pulp Fiction and Amélie, are famous for their soundtracks, sometimes referred to as their OSTs, which stands for Original Soundtrack. Other films, and I'm definitely looking at you, Dune, have awesome sound design. Not just the music, but the sound design, the sounds in the film. Absolutely amazing. But maybe you prefer your films to be a bit more realistic. Something with no gimmicks, no silly things like time travel or superheroes, and just strong characters and a good plot. Films like Shawshank Redemption, which regularly makes the best films of all time lists. You might even like your films to have some gritty realism, which is both realistic but also not afraid to show you the ugly side of life. Or perhaps you prefer your films to grab your attention straight away and keep you on the edge of your seat throughout. Films that are gripping. Films that make you want to eat popcorn. Okay, so that's talking about the films you like, but sometimes, we want to talk about the films we didn't like and why we didn't like them. I mean, some films are just rubbish, right? In some films, and I'm not mentioning any names like, for example, Lost in Translation, in some films, the story just doesn't go anywhere. But at least Lost in Translation was kind of interesting, unlike some other films which are just boring. Like, I've heard The English Patient, which is, I'm told, a mind-numbingly dull film. I haven't seen it, so I've probably escaped it. Some films are rubbish because the writing is really weak, leading to unconvincing storylines and unrelatable characters. Some films are full of stereotyped characters, or just stereotypes, or just badly written characters. And some films have very, very superficial characters with no depth and no personality. And some films, like Highlander 2, just make no sense at all. Made no sense. That film. Anyway, back to the first question. What's your favourite film? Why do you like it? What's your least favourite film? Why don't you like it? Okay, that's 4 questions. But yeah, let me know in the comments. And yeah, let's talk about films. Meanwhile, I heard there's a new rule coming into effect very soon, and it's simply that if you've reached over 2 minutes of watching a YouTube video, you are legally obliged to like and subscribe. I think it's coming to effect 2 minutes. So yeah, I'd recommend quickly finishing this video if you plan to not like or not subscribe for some crazy reason, or just hitting those buttons now. All right, cool. Well, thanks very much. That was good fun. Always enjoyable talking about films. I will see you next time.